And let's start off with the big one, taking a look back at the Grade 1 Preakness. Let's take a look at the field. There were 8 signed on in here. Justify was looking for the middle jewel in the United States Triple Crown. He went off as the 2-5 favorite. He'd have to deal with good magic every step of the way. Dave Rodman, kudos to all the race callers this weekend down there. Dave Rodman and Larry Colmus, good luck. This was the stretch run from what we could see anyway, coming out of the fog of the Preakness.
And in the meantime, down to the inside, Bravazzo working a little bit harder as they move to the top of the stretch. A head-and-head battle. Looks like a showdown in the fog. It is good magic on the inside. Justify on the outside. Even turns. And they're head-to-head into the stretch as they make the turn for home. And now Justify and Mike Smith trying to grab the lead. Justify begins to pull away. Justify is in front. Justify, and here's Tenfold on the outside, Bravazzo, Justify, Bravazzo, Tenfold, then Good Magic and Lone Sailor, followed by Sporting Chance.
Justify does get the job done. He prevails. 2 legs down, 1 to go. Elmont, New York in 3 weeks. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Pays $2.80 as the winner. The number 8 Bravazzo runs second for Wayne Lucas as a 15-1 shot, and Tenfold for Steve Asmussen. The longest shot in the field at 26-1 runs third. Good Magic, the second choice at odds of 7-2, runs fourth. A valiant effort. Again, we'll dive into the entirety of the race a little bit here momentarily. First things first, though, let's talk a little bit about your Derby and Preakness winner, Justify. He's 5 of 5 lifetime. He is just under $3 million in career earnings. Think about that. This horse has won nearly $3 million in 5 races. Unbelievable what he's accomplished in a short amount of time. Owned by China Horse Club, Head of Plains Partners LLC, Starlight Racing, and Windstar Farm. Trained by Bob Baffert, bred by John D. Gunther in Kentucky. Ridden to victory by Mike Smith, and you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's by Scat Daddy out of a Ghost Zapper mare named Stage Magic. Let's get into the details. A 97 Beyer speed figure for Justify. So the first time in his 5 lifetime starts that he did not register a triple-digit Beyer speed figure. However, on the flip side, Timeform US, he earned a 128. Now, I'll dive into sort of the details of all those things momentarily and just compare the 2 races, the Derby and the Preakness. For what it's worth, Timeform US also had the main track at Pimlico. It was sloppy all day, well documented the amount of rain that they had, I believe over 7 inches from Tuesday to Saturday. Timeform US had the main track listed as slightly speed friendly, so it would have played into the hooves of a horse like Justify, who was out there forwardly placed throughout. I bring up the difference in the speed figures because I think it is interesting. You had a number of folks after the race and social media and just in general speak about, well, was this a good effort or a bad effort from Justify? And I shouldn't term it like that. Was this an improvement from the Kentucky Derby? Was this basically status quo, keeping everything on a level playing field? Or did he have a slight regression from his run 2 weeks ago in Louisville? I kind of look at this and say, when you look at the way this race was run, he's out there, and Good Magic is dueling with him every step of the way. He puts Good Magic away, and Good Magic, to his credit, dug in as gamely as he did. And, okay, the figure may come back a little bit light from a Beyer standpoint, but from a Timeform standpoint, it's actually the fastest race he's run of the 2 classic races. He earned a 127 in the Kentucky Derby, and he earned a 128 in the Preakness. So, from that standpoint, he actually ran a better race on Timeform scale as opposed to the Beyers. That's something as a handicapper, you just need to go in and decide what you think of the race as a whole. For what it's worth, Good Magic also, from a Timeform standpoint, now keep in mind, they factor in the pace situation. Good Magic, according to Timeform, ran a better race here in the Preakness than he did in the Derby from a numbers standpoint, a 127 in the Preakness and a 124 in the Kentucky Derby. Justify is a very, very talented horse. Not breaking any news there. Anybody that has half a nut in their head realizes that. This is a horse that he just continues to get the job done, and it's very admirable. What he has accomplished in such a short amount of time is really unprecedented, and it's very difficult to try to compare him to some of these other horses that we've seen that have been very, very talented in recent years, just simply because he's done so much in such a short amount of time. You know, we talked a little bit about Arrogate, where when he was kind of like a comet, where just was here and there, come and go. And in that short amount of time that you get to see it, it was unbelievable. American Pharoah, we at least got it over the course of a 2-year-old campaign as well as the entirety of a 3-year-old season. And basically every one of them was a brilliant effort, including his Travers that he lost. Justify has really put forth giant efforts in all 5 lifetime starts. But keep in mind, his first start was in February. Here we are the 3rd week in May. This horse has done some things in such a short amount of time that it's very, very, very difficult to truly sit there and put some sort of context with it, because it's just something that has not happened before. Now, can he carry this form over to Belmont in 3 weeks to wrap things up for the Triple Crown? From a buyer standpoint, if you look at that, perhaps he's going the wrong way. If you look at the way this race was finished, and Mike Watchmaker, the national handicapper for the Racing Form, brought it up in his weekend column, that generally when you have bunched up finish, we've talked about it a number of times, if it happened in a maiden claimer, we would say probably not a great field, or probably not any sort of a superior effort in there. The likelihood of all of them running giant races is very slim, as opposed to perhaps all of them running mediocre races. I have to be honest, I thought Justify ran very well. I think this is a good effort. I'm inclined to think that at some point it's going to catch up to him, because I have a hard time imagining that this is a horse that's going to all of a sudden he's going to buck every trend that there is, and that he's going to win the Triple Crown 3 weeks from now, and his 6th race in 16 weeks at a 1.5 miles, 3 different states, all over the country, different conditions. We'll find out if he finally gets a fast track. Perhaps that moves him up as opposed to a wet track. Who knows? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of field we get assembled for a race like the Belmont. Let's talk about Good Magic before we talk about Bravazzo and Tenfold and anyone else. Good Magic, you heard afterward that Chad Brown was not pleased with the way that the race was run with Jose Ortiz, that this was not the plan to go out there to the front. Jose accepted the blame, said that's not, it was on me. That's not how things were supposed to go. I have to be honest with you. If you're being serious, and I understand what Chad's point is, this is a horse that is better with a target. He's just not one to go out there on the lead. You got handled easily 2 weeks ago with that running style. The only way that you could have won this race, in my opinion, and we talked about it a little bit last week in the preview edition. I talked about it in the Race of the Day video. I thought the only way that Good Magic could beat Justify was to go after him. And I have no complaints with the way that thing played out. I thought that Good Magic ran a great race. I thought Jose rode him perfectly. Go back and watch from what you can see. The NBC feed is a little bit clearer than the Pimlico in-house feed, and that's nobody's fault. It's just Mother Nature just really dealt the folks in Baltimore a really bad hand this week. Jose's got a really, really hard hold on Good Magic. And I think when they go into the first turn, you can see Jose look out over on his right side, waiting for Justify to go and clear over. But they were going an honest clip. They went 23 for the opening quarter, and when he couldn't clear, to me, it's not a matter of Good Magic and Jose just being hell-bent on trying to get to the front. He's sitting there, and he's got 2 fistfuls of dynamite. But if all of a sudden Justify is going to just kind of go at a relatively easy pace or a relatively easy gallop, if they don't go and push him, this probably is just a runaway. So I don't know how you can sit there and criticize Jose Ortiz for the ride on Good Magic. I thought he rode the horse fine, and I thought the horse ran really, really well. There's nothing wrong with getting beat by, you got beat by Justify by 2.5 lengths 2 weeks ago, and you got beat here by what, roughly a length? I mean, this is a really nice horse, Good Magic, and I don't know, he's just probably not as good as Justify. That's not a bad thing. It's not a knock. I mean, there are a lot of horses. Probably all of them are not as talented as Justify as far as 3-year-olds are concerned. I don't know. I don't know how you can sit there and complain about it. I'd like that they're not going to run in the Belmont, and we'll find out. Maybe he'll be ready to go for Saratoga, and we'll get a bigger and stronger Good Magic, but I thought he ran very well here, and I think he's a horse going forward that you obviously have to take seriously wherever he does show up. Let's talk about Bravazzo and Tenfold a little bit. Tenfold, longest shot on the board, came home in 43.77. When you look at that as opposed to Justify, who came home in 44.51, Tenfold certainly looked good, and this was a little bit of a surprise effort from him, the 95 buyer and the 125 Timeform US rating. The interesting thing is he popped back to his left lead at the end, and I know Steve Asmussen is saying we're going to go on to the Belmont and only defeated by a little more than a half length. To me, I do wonder a little bit about distance with him because of that little lead situation, and generally speaking, that doesn't, you got to go a heck of a lot farther 3 weeks from now than you did on Saturday. 1 mile and 3/16 as opposed to 1.5 miles. That's an entirely different ballgame. The horse that and I'll pat myself on the back, I liked him coming into this spot to run second, and I kind of like him coming out of here. I'm not saying I'm going to pick him, but I think Bravazzo ran really, really well. And the concern is, On the far turn, he looks like he's in deep water when Luis Saez is really getting into him, asking him to run. And you can see when you look at the chart that at the top of the lane, Bravazzo goes from 3rd to 5th. Now, it may have only been just by minor margins, but he clearly kind of just wasn't getting around for one reason or another. But then once he got out into the clear, and Saez, I thought it was a great ride, angle him out into the clear. This horse finished very, very well. 44.07 for his final stretch. And again, we talked about it with Justify. He came home in 44.51. From a gallop out standpoint, okay, Bravazzo didn't finish or gallop out as strong as a Justify or a Tenfold did. But I just have a funny feeling that the way that this horse runs, that it will translate to Belmont Park in 3 weeks. And my logic with him coming into this spot, that the Louisiana Derby was basically a non-starter. So the Kentucky Derby was his first start in almost 8 weeks. And then this was a much tighter version. Lucas makes it seem like this is a horse that's only going to continue to improve with more running more frequently. He's not nearly as talented as Justify. And I think that's the thing that people, when you pick against a horse like Justify, it's really not because you think someone's better than him. And the reason that I didn't like Good Magic on Saturday, it's not because I don't think he's talented. I think he's very obviously the second most talented horse that ran in the Preakness. But circumstances get you beat. American Pharoah was the best horse in the Travers a few years ago. Circumstances got him beat. Frosted going after him, softening him up, and then getting beat by a horse coming from off of it. And Keen Ice. It's not because Keen Ice was better than him. It's because circumstances got American Pharoah beat. I think circumstances could possibly end up getting Justify beat. All the racing in such a short amount of time. Perhaps someone gets aggressive with him early on. And then you get someone that can come from just off of it and get the job done. Who knows? We'll find out. But that's the logic with me anyway with Bravazzo going forward. I'm not saying I'm going to pick him. I'm going to have to wait and see. You know, it sounds like you'll get Hofberg and Vino Rosso, and perhaps you get some other new shooters, or fresh faces anyway, that were waiting coming from the Derby for the Belmont. But I think Bravazzo is a very interesting horse going forward for a race like the Belmont, because I don't think the distance is going to be much of an issue for him. But the story of Saturday afternoon, the real story, outside of Justify, was the fog and the rain and just the miserable conditions. But none of that could stop Justify. Justify is now a perfect 5 for 5, just under $3 million in career earnings. He earns a 97 Beyer speed figure, winning the 143rd Preakness, and a 128 time form U.S. rating. And guess what, folks? It's been a little while, a few years, but we got another Triple Crown on the line 3 weeks from now in Elmont, New York.